it should be considered. I think some of the veteran educators have been proponents of scrapping boarding schools. Joshua Kiptoo.
So, thank you very much. I think one of the biggest, if I'm to use the context of what Professor says, Kenya ni nchi ya majabu, one of the majabu aspect of Kenya, our peculiar nature is that we never deal with systemic issues. Our response is always knee-jerk, our response is always hysterical, and our response is always deep grief, but for a very short period of time. We will speak highly of what needs to be done, but that conversation never lands in the right places where policy directions are done. And why I'm saying that is because I don't think this is the first time we're talking about the boarding schools menace. We are a country that never goes into the depth of understanding the context. How did these boarding schools happen? Where did we start and how did we find ourselves here? This is basically a colonial edifice that has been there, sustained. I think as a country, we lack what I say per se to be a sense of identity, governance identity. We lack. We basically carried forward what we got from the colonialists. How much did we move away from? Why I'm saying so is because there are two aspects you can refer to. The aspect of boarding schools was because of basically parents then being unable to provide for their children. So boarding schools were seen as sanctuaries and avenues within which kids can be taken care of and focus on education. Again, it was under the cultural underpinning then, that is in the 30s, 40s, 50s, when education was still negotiable. So it was a case of the colonialists and the missionaries saying, let us seclude the kids, keep them away so that they can focus on school. But that has been 70, 80 years down the line. Have we changed that? Nothing. That's one bit. The second bit has been, when we were looking at the CBE, if you are seeking to change the curriculum, one of the major selling points of CBE was that it is a system that would wish to shift the boarding school mindset to day schools. So whereby we equip the day schools to make them efficient and effective enough that we don't have to send our schools miles away. Has that been achieved? I don't think so. And have Kenyan people, for example, accepted the need to move? I don't think so. Actually, for us, what we do, we always break down our public systems and privatize our public problems. We assume if we have this private school here, I can escape this menace that is in public schools. That's what happens. Secondly, we then fight for the few slots that are there. That's why it is cutthroat competition to get kids into these high schools, especially when you talk about national schools and what have you. Importantly, when it comes to safety, how much have we gone into? Because if you look at the building that was shared, two anomalies, and I would really want Prof to speak about this. What are the school boards doing when they are doing boarding schools? I don't think they look like dormitories that have been equipped for safety. Nothing showcases that. It is more or less like a close. You just close one door and everything is done. Because for Utumishi, the door was closed and that was it. If you look at the fire tragedies that have happened over the past 30 years, Kianguli, it just needs the arsonist to close the door and that's it, finished. Importantly, if you look at the CCTV, if it is authentic for that matter, beds were in the corridor, meaning outside the cubicle. So meaning there's again a case of congestion. So if you are to have this conversation, my only prayer would be, are we having this conversation for the sake of whipping up emotions and hysteria? Or are we having this conversation with a genuine desire that the policymakers would sit and say, let's have a rethink. Let's look back and say what works, what doesn't work. Our country is always this kind of a system that is more or less comfortable with the status quo. And I think that's why once in a while you've had the president very frustrated saying that, what is the scale of our ambition? How much do we seek to change? How much do we want to do? How much do we want to overhaul and and just get things done? So it is really painful. In fact, I don't know, it was by coincidence because before I started addressing this, I was looking at that very emotional picture of this parent. I think he's called Dennis Nyakeri, who on the material day had almost, in fact, he was shirtless. And you could see he'd lost it. And he was giving his story that, look, I just need to know where my daughter is. And that's not just one case. Those are 16. In fact, there are 19 souls lost. Is that the end of it? I'm not sure. If the facilities this is just a sample, and we have only been able to know about it by virtue of the tragedy. And mind you, Utumishi Academy is not just any other school.
Yeah.
If you were to put it on a plane, this is a school that is funded by the National Police Service.
Be the top.
Yeah.
It is very sad that one that is heavily funded by an institution of national stature like National Police
It's an
Service.
offshoot of Utumishi Academy.
So can we
the
then
boys.
cascade it down?
Yeah.
Can we cascade it down to look at the other extra, extra county schools? So I would want Prof to speak about this, because I saw the minister speaking about having a common uniform. Why haven't we talked about the building of the dormitories we have? Why?
Right, but just beside that, I think we need also maybe, as you're saying, there are deeper issues aside from the policy, the infrastructure.
Right.
There's a whole environment and a cloud of behavioral change that we cannot really lay a finger on, because once we know the outcome of this particular case with the 7 girls, right? Or nine as it stands right now. Then it really goes to show it's not about the exams. There's a deeper simmering issue that has not been addressed in this country. I think maybe we had a band-aid solution with also Matiang'i, still with the same case that we have with the Inferno flaring.